Welcome to Season 2 of the Internal Marketing Podcast, the unique podcast series that flips the marketing conversation from external to internal. Here we explore how companies can engage and empower their very own employees to become powerful advocates of the company brand. The goal is to build that brand and to drive growth. I'm your host, Kerry-Ann Stimson, and I'm happy to be back with you for another season, and I'm especially happy to welcome Workshop as the global sponsor for Season 2. Now, what's Workshop, you may be asking? Well, we know that we can't talk about internal marketing without talking about employee advocacy, right? But building an employee advocacy program doesn't just happen overnight. It means that you need to be creating a stream of positive, engaging content to get your employees bought in and to encourage them to start sharing it. And the best place to create that content is with Workshop. It's an internal marketing platform for creating beautifully branded employee-specific campaigns. It replaces any email tool that you have, and it integrates with the other communication channels that your team uses the most, including Slack, SharePoint, and Microsoft Teams. To find out more about Workshop, just head on over to useworkshop.com/marketing. I've included the link in the show notes so that you can go there and learn more, and you'll be able to download their complete guide to building your very own employee advocacy program. Thanks, Workshop, for coming on board as my global sponsor this season. And as the season progresses, we'll learn more about what Workshop has to offer. So let's jump right into this season's first episode. In this episode, I'll be exploring with Refine Labs CEO Chris Walker, who is my featured guest, about how he leads a culture of internal marketing and employee advocacy at his company. Hi everybody, welcome to another episode of the Internal Marketing Podcast. I am your host, Kerry-Ann Stimson, and I have with me here today another awesome guest who, for many of us marketers on LinkedIn, he should be no stranger to a lot of us. He's Chris Walker, CEO of Refine Labs. Hi Chris, welcome to the Internal Marketing Podcast. Glad to have you.
Kerry-Ann, I am pumped to be on this podcast. I also can't wait till the day I can come to Kingston, Jamaica, because I hear it's lovely there.
Oh, it certainly is, and we'd be happy to have you. But thank you so much for joining me here today, Chris. And as I was sharing with you in the lead up to this discussion, it's not very often that we get the chance to have a CEO on a podcast like this talking about the whole matter of internal marketing and really specifically employee advocacy. And what's really so remarkable about you is that you're actually walking the talk. You are out there every single day providing value-added content. You're not really out there, as far as I'm concerned, just waving the Refine Labs flag, although we're going to get to that. But you're really providing value-added content every day. And one of the things that really struck me about you and your content, I was listening to a post you had done a few months back, and you said that you are a part of your marketing team. And I found that to be very profound. A CEO that acknowledges and believes that he's a part of the marketing team. Why do you believe that? I mean, what gives you that thinking to form that view and that positioning of yourself as part of the marketing team?
So two things. One, I believe that it's my responsibility to communicate the vision for the company broadly to the market. I think that that's a CEO's responsibility in almost all organizations to do that. Secondly, we run demand marketing for 30 B2B SaaS companies. And so it's important that I have a deep understanding of the things that are working the best right now to drive our business so that we can then operationalize that and then deploy it for the companies that we do work for. And so it's part driving the narrative, but also part, I consider it R&D.
I love that. And when you talk about communicating that vision, that mission of the company, of course, that's something that you do externally as the CEO, as perhaps, I guess, the chief representative of the company. How do you do that internally with your team? Practically, what does that look like for you as a CEO day to day, month to month?
Yeah, so first off, the communication externally is also consumed by internal employees, right? So we have ongoing comms with our employees. A lot of the employees show up to our own events that we have with people and listen to the podcasts and consume the LinkedIn content, which is ongoing training and development for the team, which is awesome from a efficiency or productivity standpoint, but is also really strong just from a just making sure that our message is being consumed by all of the employees. So I think that that's one of the big parts.
Yeah. And it's almost like, as I like to say when we talk about internal marketing, it's kind of like seeing your employees as an internal customer, or, in the sense that how are you communicating to them in a way that onboards them in your mission and vision in the same way you're passionate about communicating that to your customers outside.
And in addition to that, like we just had our team meeting before this, we talked about, we were closing out Q2. We had a very successful Q2. We did a ton of highlights of all the progress that we made. 10 new team members, a bunch of new customers, all those things that we did. And so we communicated those, and then ongoing reminders about where are we right now, where are we going, what's the mission, what are we doing in order to get there. And so I think that's motivating for people. I feel like they're a part of something bigger than themselves.
Absolutely. And the ultimate objective, as I always like to say, for internal marketing is what we call employee advocacy or employee brand advocacy, i.e., employees being advocates of the brand externally. And I think, again, as a CEO who is really walking the talk, you've been out there providing value added content religiously every day on LinkedIn for quite some time. Could you share with us that story, that catalyst that kind of pushed you to get started in that?
Absolutely. So I've been executing organic social marketing since about 2012, right? Some in B2C, some in B2B. So in the B2C companies, they were companies that I owned where there was no organic market demand. You need to figure out how things are working. And I started to move to organic and paid social because I saw revenue coming in. And I was like, this stuff is working. And so through that experience, got to see some different patterns. Platforms are, when they're early and there's a lot of people on them, there's a lot of opportunity. I saw that on LinkedIn early 2019. Posted for a little while, not a lot of traction. I'm sure a lot of people kind of know that, the 3 likes, the 10 likes, the 7 likes. And then I had one post that got 150 likes. And then from that day forward, I think it was August 9th, 2019, I was like, we're going every day on LinkedIn until it's no longer this good, and it's still good, right? And so we got pot committed into LinkedIn. When you get pot committed into a channel, you also start to innovate inside of the channel. Like I mentioned, back to R&D, like part of our job is to use the channel to do marketing. The other part of the job is to understand the channel better than everybody else so that we can tell our customers what they should be doing. And so I started to push the boundaries quite a bit in LinkedIn. We moved into video we were one of the early producers of video content on LinkedIn. Still very, very few people do it because the engagement metrics that people see make it feel like it's not working as much when it works 10 times better. And so just understanding that nuance was really important. Then we moved into live events and a podcast. The podcast then fuels content for LinkedIn. And we've continued to iterate inside of that channel for a very long time. What's happened through that? Since I started on LinkedIn, the company's grown from 0 people to 35 employees in the past 2 years. The level of talent that we have is absolutely incredible. People that are potential employees, not only potential customers, but potential employees see us on LinkedIn and say, hey, that's something that I want to be a part of. So we attract top talent that way. We have incredible customers that we get through LinkedIn that we would not get through other channels like paid, like search marketing, SEO, SEM. We have an incredible foundation of a brand that's continuing to exponentially accelerate based on the activities that we do that do not happen a lot in other marketing channels that a lot of companies choose to use. And so I'm hoping through that statement to paint a picture of the opportunity here, and the opportunity from LinkedIn. Who knows when it's going to end, right? Like there will always be people marketing on LinkedIn, but how long is the opportunity good is something that I'm super interested in seeing. I don't think anybody knows the answer, but there will always be another place. And so being able to start moving on LinkedIn so that you have the learnings and the buy-in internally and the ability to execute on them where your customers like it, so that then when the next thing happens, you actually know what you're doing.
And what's so interesting as you talk about the growth of your company is that in addition to all the great content that you provide, and as I like to always emphasize, you're not out there just beating us over the head with a sales pitch. You're literally providing value added content, with no pitch at all, quite frankly. And your team is also doing the same thing. I mean, I follow a couple of your team members as well. Megan has her podcast going, and just every day your team is just giving that valuable content. Again, not feeling like a sales pitch at all. How did that start to gain momentum? Is that something you kind of said to your team, hey, look, guys, we need to be doing this? Or is it something that they innately wanted to do themselves?
People want to do it. It's not just my employees. Anyone that's listening to this, your employees probably want to do it. What I find is that as being an employee in several companies before I started my company, most companies suppress this activity. They think that they get scared because they think that, if Jimmy starts to get traction here, then they'll no longer want to work here. So let's just stop Jimmy from doing that, right? They have those types of things. They're like, if I post this, what my coworkers think of me, what my boss is going to say. Oh, I'm posting on LinkedIn. I'm looking for another job. Whether companies do it explicitly or not, they suppress this behavior inside of organizations based on culture and executive behavior is my feeling here. And so the people that work here want to do this. And so we encourage people that want to do it. We give them the tools and the resources in order to do it. And we demonstrate the behaviors that we know are successful so that they can find their own path that's going to be successful for them. We also don't require at any point anyone to write anything about what we do. Some people post about like health thoughts. Everyone can talk about whatever they want. It's their channel, and that's the way that I see it. And we don't force anyone to do it either. So the people that want to do it are committed to it, because to really do it, it takes effort, it takes commitment, it takes time. But as people at our company start to get recognized in the industry for also being smart, it, one, creates a massive brand halo. Way more people know about us when 30 people post on LinkedIn versus just me. So massive brand halo for us in terms of customer acquisition, and our people are getting a platform to dramatically accelerate their careers professionally, which will ultimately lead back to benefits for us.
And I totally agree with that. And I guess the next question is, well, first of all, I think it's a great clarifying point that you're not vetting their stuff, right? And you're not saying, well, you got to post X number of things about Refine Labs per month.
A lot of the programs that are in place don't work, right? Like, I know what the play is. Buy an employee advocacy program, put in content in there, and then try and force people to push out like marketing generated content that nobody wants. And it's not personal, and it just doesn't fit on the platform well, but I see that being a common move. And so there's a lot of things that are wrong there. You're giving people no flexibility. You're telling them what they should post. You're forcing them to do it in a certain place, whether or not they want to. And so some of those things are a recipe for friction.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess the next obvious question to that is that I think companies probably feel that they have to kind of give that prescription and give that content because they want to see the direct connection to the brand, And I guess for someone like you and your team who are obviously doing this with great success, tangibly, how has that impacted the Refine Labs brand specifically? Can you speak to that?
So a bunch of people on this podcast are going to be looking for some type of data, right? Because straight line attribution is not how organic social works over here. So we're not going to have a bunch of leads that came through LinkedIn. Yeah. But I can tell you the only marketing that we do is through a podcast and LinkedIn. And we grew revenue by more than 50% last quarter. And so like the growth is happening in an exponential path as we continue to scale this out. It's going to be impossible to tell what the exact impact was, which I think is why a lot of people get scared about this or don't do it, because the way they set up measurement is just not built for how the world works today. And so the impact is high. I mentioned the three things at the beginning: dramatically accelerating customer acquisition. The caliber of companies continues to get much better. The acquisition of talent continues to get much better. The overall employee happiness of the company continues to get better and better. And that's a recipe for success. I don't need any metrics on how many leads we got in order to prove that it's working. Like, if you either believe in this stuff or you don't, right? So if you're listening to this podcast and you're like, I don't believe in this stuff, you probably already stopped listening by now. But you're not going to see some type of signal. You're not going to get some type of data to show this in any simple way, unless there's some type of platform vendor or MarTech vendor that wants to push this narrative and find data to prove it. But it works.
I have no doubt that it does. I mean, talking about brands, so your team is out there, they're doing awesome things. Can you say what the impact has been for their own personal brands as well? And even yours, I'm sure.
I think that generally the concept is when more people know about you, more opportunities find you. And so I think it's a good strategy for anyone, whether you're a company or an employee, to produce content on the internet that certain people get value from, so that they know about you, they know about what you're good at, and they perceive as somebody that may be able to do something with them or for them in the future. That's pretty much what we're doing here. And so from our employee standpoint, other companies, again, like I mentioned, will be scared that our VP level employee now has 10,000 followers and is getting a lot of traction. I'm not scared, right? Because the vision and the growth trajectory of the company is so dramatic, and it's my responsibility as a CEO to create a culture that people love, to compensate and incentivize those people in the right ways that they love, to put people in a position of career growth or personal development that is unmatched. That's my job from a retention standpoint, not suppressing someone's LinkedIn content.
Absolutely. And it's interesting listening to you, because I'm sure there are some folks that are also listening that are like, look, I'm a CEO or I'm a company exec or something like that. And they're probably a little hesitant to put themselves out there for many different reasons. What would you say to folks that are still kind of on the fence where that is concerned, speaking as a CEO yourself?
When I look at CEOs or executives that don't do this, what I do is I look at the things that they do. And so the things that executives are thrilled to do is go into a conference presentation and speak to 25 people, or to go to some big sales meeting, or to drop by a couple of customers that are top customers once a year to see them, right? So I'm looking at these types of behaviors, which the whole goal is to get to know someone at a deeper level and to create credibility and value, and do networking in a place where you can start to see other people. And then I just help them understand that they don't need to fly to the big sales meeting or wait for the conference that's happening in 6 months. They can do it every day on LinkedIn. They can do it every day on a podcast or events or anything like that, and trying to help people understand that this is just a far more efficient way, a far more scalable way, a far more effective way to do the same things you're already doing.
Yeah, exactly. And by extension, then, even if as a leader, I'm okay with putting myself out there, because I trust the fact that I'm the CEO and I know what to say, I guess, and how not to put the brand into disrepute, which I think is a lot of folks' concerns. They're also afraid of letting their team members put themselves out there as well. What would you say to that sort of mindset? How would you encourage them to do otherwise?
The question is why? Like, why are you scared about your employees on LinkedIn? They're posting on Instagram, they're posting on Facebook, they're doing stuff at the club that's not getting posted, but there might be some pictures from it, you know what I'm saying? And so why, just because it's LinkedIn, is it so much different than everything else that your employee's doing? What you're basically saying is that you don't trust your employee to be a human, to be responsible, and to be able to live their own life, as if because you're the brand that you control them. And that's just not how it works. And so I find, especially when as I get deeper and deeper into larger executive organizations, I find that people get scared and feel like they need to control their employees with these new things versus leaning into them, not resisting technology advances, instead just lean into them and get the impact that's there. And so I'm not fully there yet, but what I'm starting to conclude is that as a company or as a CEO, you either got the culture to do it, or you either got the mindset to do it as a CEO, or you don't. And I think that once the initial pieces of the puzzle are built, it's very hard to reverse that. Additionally, I just have not had any success trying to convince a CEO that doesn't believe in this stuff to move, and so I spend zero time trying to do it.
You're in front of a CEO who's like, look, I'm there with you. I get what you're saying. I want to get there. Maybe it's a new CEO coming into a very established sort of a company with ways of doing things, and they want to help turn things around. Do you have any sort of advice on a kind of a playbook that they can probably things that they should be doing, or things that they could start out with to kind of create that shift, not just for themselves, but as you talk about the cultural shifts that need to happen and so on, so that they can get going on that path?
I'm going to give you the exact thing that you could do, knowing that 99.99% of people will never do it. And so here's what it is. Step one, if you believe in that thing as an executive, model the behavior that you think other people should be doing. Most people won't do that. So what does model the behavior look like? Put together some type of either event or other thing that allows you to create content, which then allows you to put that content on the internet, whether it's through written, like your written words, or through a video or audio that you got captured at the event. But you need some type of customer input, which allows, if you're doing it to acquire customers, if you're doing it for talent, you have more expanded open areas. But find that thing, be able to take an input from what people want, and then communicate back out the things that you know that will help them, and then do that 3 to 5 times a week for the next 8 weeks. And that's how you get it started internally as an executive. That if you're an executive and you want your company to do it and you're not doing it, I think that there's something wrong in that equation.
I'm with you on that one. Well, Chris, there's a couple of more questions before we wrap. My usual last question that I add as my cherry on top of the sundae is, of all the things that you would have shared here today, what in your mind is the biggest takeaway that you'd like our listeners to come away with, having heard everything you would have shared?
There's a massive opportunity to have your employees create content for the internet, and those platforms can vary. If you sell to developers, it might be Reddit. If you sell to another person, it might be a Facebook group. If you sell locally, it might be through Instagram, right? Who knows where it is, but putting content on the internet in places where either your customers or future employees would be able to see that information and then have a positive reflection of that person that works at, and then connect us to the brand, which creates a positive reflection of the brand, is the opportunity right now. We are in a time where the distribution of content has become completely disrupted, where each individual person, I don't need to communicate through a brand, because that brand would need to go through some type of media outlet in order to get the distribution. That whole system is completely gone, right? It exists, but now I don't need it. I can go and put content on the internet, get it directly to people, and so can all of your employees. And so I couldn't push harder on this specific opportunity, but it requires a completely different mindset than I see most companies try and execute this on.
Yeah, thank you. Love that. Of course, my last question that I ask all my awesome guests is, how can we, the internal marketing tribe that's listening, how can we support you?
So what I would like for people to consider doing is, if you don't follow me or some people at my company on LinkedIn, I would encourage you to follow those people so that you can watch what we do. And then what I'm hoping is that one of you tries it and then sends me a message about how it's going.
That's great. And I'll definitely include a link to some of their profiles in the show notes so folks can just click on and see and look in, because I highly encourage it, guys. I follow quite a few of the members of your team, and it's awesome. Great value added content. Even your Refine Labs page. I mean, how do you see it? If I could just kind of ask real quick, because obviously your team is doing a lot of different stuff, and then you have the official Refine Labs page on LinkedIn, which is doing pretty well. It's obviously not doing as well as maybe your page, and I think that's because it's the human-to-human connection that people enjoy. But I'm sure the Refine Labs company page benefits from your employees' content as well.
100%. So it could be the human to human, but my belief is that it's actually built on how the algorithm runs on company pages versus personal pages. It just reduces visibility on company pages. The reason that we are building up the company page, and by the way, I'm not involved at all in that, so someone else on our team is doing that. The reason that we did it that way is to prove that you could, one, to model the behavior of what we think the best-in-class company page on LinkedIn is. When we go into a channel, it's how do we become the best at this channel, so people look at us and be like, this is how we should do things. And so that's the lens that we look through at it. And one of the things that we get to is that the idea that the person that actually is the subject matter expert or is creating the content or communicating the narrative might not be the one that's writing the copy and posting on the page. And so we set this up explicitly this way to prove that somebody else, you could take content, stream, and then it could get distributed somewhere else. That page has been growing quite nicely, continues to be a good experiment. But when it's down to its core of what we do, we pick several opportunities that we see that we think are the best opportunities right now to do in marketing, and then we execute flawlessly. We execute hard, right? As opposed to a lot of companies that will execute soft on things that worked the best 10 years ago while they miss all of the things that are happening the best right now. And so it's just about having a clear recognition of which things are working right now, where the new opportunities are, and being open to those. And then when they are, not being scared and going into it of we're going to be able to figure this out better than anybody else with that mindset. I think that's what we took on that's how we look at the company page.
Great. Thank you so much. Well, Chris, thank you so very, very much. I mean, it's been awesome as usual. First of all, thank you for accepting my invitation to be a part of this conversation today. It's a little bit of a different type of conversation because I really, really was very passionate about understanding the thinking behind what you do. And again, as a CEO who is obviously leading his team and fostering a culture of employee advocacy and empowering your team, and of course leading by example, as I'd like to say, but certainly you're engaging your team and empowering them to be developing content that they're passionate about, all to the benefit of the company brand, but their own personal brands as well. In a time when more companies really need to be doing this, I really appreciate that you're adding your voice to the conversation. And I'm sure a lot of folks have been certainly impacted somehow. We'll see. I think the conversation will have to continue in many different corners and quarters, but I think it's really been great, and thank you so much for your time. And to all of our valuable listeners, thank you as well for tuning into another episode of the Internal Marketing Podcast. Of course, I appreciate every single time you join us, and of course feel free to share this podcast with anyone who you think you'd find this information useful. And as always, everybody, take care. Thank you for joining.
Thank you.